Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 56 of Little Things for Bonsai People. And this time, I am joined by my co-host, Carmen Leskoviensky. How's it going today?
Oh, just have another cold, but...
Yep. If you can't tell, I'm sniffly too. It's just that time of the year. In the United States, in our part of the hemisphere, it is... it's colder than most people would want it to be. But I mean, it's fall, so going into early winter. So, what are we going to do about it? I mean, the trees are loving it right now. They need the dormancy. But yeah, we're just going to, we're going to do something we haven't done in a while. We're going to talk about a particular species for bonsai. And I don't think we've ever done one for elm trees. We've talked about elms in passing. And I just wanted to do a little breakdown of different elm species and varieties and stuff that I get to work with and stuff that you, Carmen, have had experience with. I'm sure you've had experience with plenty of elms. That's going to be the Humacia. And then we're going to talk about a little bit of winter care that's really particular or specific to deciduous bonsai trees. But before we get into that, I do need to mention that our podcast is sponsored by our amazing patrons over on patreon.com/little things for bonsai people. Head on over there and become a bonsai best bud and hang out in our Discord with these amazing people, starting off our list with Tori Solis, Vicky Oth, Boyd Snellgrove, Ricky Ruins, Joshua Bentley, Snappy Chappers, Joe Jenkins, Justin Knight, Backyard Bonsai Australia, Greenwich Gardens, Taylor Peacock, Chase Pertweet, Austin Atkins, Karen Coswell, Lois Torres, AC Castle, Bonsai Marine, J.A.S. Potts, Chris Fasoon, Timothy Arsenal, Randy Bennett, Victrina Ridgeway, LaRon's Bonsai Yard, and we have 2 brand spanking new Bonsai Best Buds.
Hooray!
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being Bonsai Buds and Best Buds, to be more exact. And you guys can jump on into the Discord and talk bonsai with our little community we got going on here. Welcome Nancy Hoffman and Nate Murray, my buddy over here in the southern parts of Louisiana, collecting all those bald cypresses together. Thank you guys so much. And then a super special shout out to our specimen best bud, Un Bonsai Nursery. Thank you guys so much for being top tier patrons and special patrons, helping us grow the show. And then also I have to mention our editor, Matt O'Donnell. He is also a huge a huge piece of our show here. He's on our team, makes us sound smart, helps clean up the audio, makes it enjoyable to listen to. Go over to mattodonnell.com to fill out a contact form and start your own podcast show or audio engineering project with him. He's a set bassist in Nashville, Tennessee, and he's an all-around awesome guy. It's in the script. I say it every time. And the past 3 episodes, I've gotten that part really wrong. I'm very snipply. I apologize for the listeners out there. We're
just going to keep Matt on his toes. He'll be the one editing out all of our coughs and sniffles and nose blowings.
I think it'll be fine. It kind of it's like more immersion for the listeners.
We just really want you guys to feel like you're living it with us, Yeah,
it's, I mean, it's just like with Louisiana, it was 40 degrees this morning, maybe 37 at the absolute lowest, which is a joke compared to other regions, of course. But
That's cold for you guys, though.
It's chilly. I mean, that's when people start throwing on their flannel shirts and their toboggans.
The toboggan.
Yep. We were at a Thanksgiving dinner a couple of nights ago, and let me check my audio really quick, make sure it's coming in. Does it sound clean? I was making sure.
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. I've had the plug of my mic has been kind of wiggly. But yeah, we were at Thanksgiving dinner a couple of days ago, whatever, and everyone's just wearing beanies, oh
my God.
We got a couple of kids in the family. When I say kids, the family's kind of gotten older now. So it's 20,
anybody under 18.
No, 20-year-olds.
Oh, they're 20. Okay. They're still kids.
There's a couple of younger kids, but I mean, We've been doing this for a little while, so I've watched like all these kids grow up, and now everybody's like cool, and they're wearing like beanies, like the Carhartt beanies and stuff.
Oh,
like,
the Carhartt beanie,
yeah, fancy farmer beanie that you could buy at a designer store for 3 times the value. Yeah. But then my wife's grandfather comes up and he's like, "Oh, it must be toboggan season. Toboggans are back in style." And I was like, "Toboggan?
Those are sleds."
Yeah. But I had to look it up because the man is from Kate's grandfather he's from Tennessee, and that's just like
that's what they call him.
Yeah, that's like this the slang and like it's like Midwest to like Appalachian culture. It's what they call the hats.
Yeah,
because when you jump on your toboggan, you got to have your cap on.
Right.
I just thought that was
that's
so
true.
funny.
Yeah, you don't want your ears to get cold. Yeah, the cap is a very big deal here in the Pacific Northwest as well, and the flannel. But we've all been wearing flannel since September, so
yeah, flannels are pretty optimal for looking cool and staying warm a little bit. Depends on how thick your flannel is. If it's a stylish flannel,
it's hard to get a decent flannel.
That's because they're so popular nowadays. Like
this is a men's flannel. I find they're generally better quality.
For the listeners,
but they button backwards.
For the listeners, Carmen is wearing a men's flannel shirt.
Wearing a men's flannel shirt. I have women's flannel shirts too, but they're not quite.
Yeah, they're always like I noticed with Caitlin when she gets flannels from the women's section, they're always like thin as like a napkin, and then they fit weird.
Yep.
Whereas like a real flannel is supposed to just be like a box.
Exactly.
And you put it on. And
if it's not a warm box, I don't want it. I was. We're just gonna like side quest on flannels here, but I was at the store, and the women's flannels were on sale for $20, and the men's flannels were on sale for $15. And I was like, hold on a second, there's more fabric in the men's flannel. They're better quality. Why would I spend $20 on a women's flannel when I could spend $15 on a men's flannel? So I bought the men's flannel.
Yeah, it just makes so much more sense.
It really does.
Secret to all those people who love wearing toboggans and flannels to look cool. You can go over to like your local Tractor Supply store. Like, we have those out here because I live in more of a rural part of Louisiana. And do you guys have Tractor Supply in Michigan?
In Michigan, yeah, for sure. In Portland, I haven't seen Tractor Supply. I think they're here, but we've got a place called Coastal, which is very similar.
Okay.
Coastal Farm and Feed or something.
Yeah, it's just like feed and seed stores with like a little bit extra, like you can buy like all your cool like Carhartt clothes and stuff and your flannels that actually work.
Your bib overalls.
Oh yeah, your awesome overalls. Get your all brown and all black overalls.
Yep. Now we're sponsored by Carhartt. No, I'm just kidding. We're not. But
Carhartt's a cool company, not an official sponsor, but just a really cool brand.
Yeah, they have nice hats. Yeah. If they want to sponsor us, that'd be fine.
That'd be funny. But yeah, I'm also saying that because like I do wear a lot of stuff like that because I mean, I am kind of like a bonsai farmer, so these kind of things matter to me. I'm really rough on a lot of the clothes and stuff that I wear, so
you have to look cool while you're doing bonsai.
Exactly. Or you can just go like super old school and just like wear blue jean overalls and like the actual like sun visor full hat kind of thing going on.
Totally.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Anyway, so we're talking about elm trees today.
Elms.
Yeah. And before we started, before we decided this was going to be today's topic, I was kind of thinking like, what types of elms should we talk about? And I know, Carmen, you haven't had a whole lot of natives. Is that what you said?
No, I've really only worked with Chinese elms and then Zelkova, which isn't an elm, but it's very similar to an elm. So those are really the only ones I've worked with. But I know that there's a lot of native species, especially down south where you are, Evan, that you work with.
Oh, yeah.
And I hear that they're very good for bonsai.
Oh, they're excellent. And I know within the Humaceae family, there's also like hackberries and hornbeams. And Zelkova would be, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we should lump those guys in with the elms, because I mean there is a big distinction between elm and elm and hackberries and hornbeams.
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe brush the surface, but let's talk more about elms specifically, because I'm curious about which natives you find particularly useful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes to the Chinese elm, it's the Humus parvifolia. Yeah. And there's also a couple of different varieties. We have a lot of crossbreeding happening out here with Chinese elm and our natives. So we get a lot of weird stuff as well. But usually we get like that. And then the Drake elm, which I think is just another cultivar of Chinese elm. There's going to be somebody out there that's like much more heavy into like the botanist side of this. I mean, you know a little bit more than I do when it comes to the identification and the nomenclature and the classifications of all these elms. So I don't know if Drake elm is necessarily a true Chinese elm. I mean, is it?
I don't know. I've never heard of it. I'm going to Google it real quick.
Yeah, Drake elm, I think, is just some kind of crossbred. While you're looking that up.
Oh, it's Chinese elm or lacebark elm.
Okay.
So it's a kind of Chinese elm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of different varieties of Chinese elm. I mean, you can get Seiju elm, you can get Hokkaido elm. So there's a lot of different...
are so cool.
The which ones?
Seiju. I love the tiny little leaves.
The Seiju is like the I guess you could say the what's the name of that candy? It's like the Nerds size elm leaf, and then you've got
teeny tiny. And
then you've got like the cupcake sprinkles is like the Hokkaido, because it's so much smaller. It's like rice grain. But yeah, Chinese elms. I like Chinese elm a lot. Don't get me wrong; they're great species. They are kind of like one of those really flexible species, kind of like the Brocummins nana when it comes to. Could be a really simplistic, just like mundane bonsai that you see a lot of them. You see a lot of like S-curve Chinese elms sold at like department stores, malls-eye, roadside kind of stuff. You see a lot of that. You go to like these big box stores. You can buy them on like Walmart and Amazon. So you can find Chinese elms everywhere. But it's one of those trees that could be taken to another level. With certain techniques and certain masteries with deciduous trees, and you can make it look outstanding.
But totally.
There's a lot of things about Chinese elms I just don't like, unfortunately.
Tell me more.
Well, there's elms in our native range here in the Southeast Louisiana that are just leagues and leagues better. And when it comes to durability and flexibility and pests and bugs and also like growth habit and rate. There's a lot of different things that we look at here. Whenever I kind of rate different elms and what would be a good species for different styles and stuff like that, the Chinese elm is not that's one of the things, like, I guess I can kind of say it down the line. It's like durability of the Chinese elm. It's pretty durable. I mean, they can take a lot of abuse. Now, when I say abuse, I mean, like, since we're talking about a beginner's podcast kind of topic here with elms, abuse would be not fertilizing and not watering correctly. So they will still kind of grow for you and they'll look strong, but they're fighters, and they get really leggy and the growth they'll get just really pathetic looking if you don't fertilize them. So they are high demand when it comes to fertilizing, but they're fairly durable. Like, I've seen some Chinese elms go completely drought and lose all their leaves, and then if you catch it within the right time frame, you can water it and they'll come right back. But it's like a restart switch that it's like trying to jumpstart your car, and if you jumpstart your car and your battery is partially charged, and you're like, okay, this is good as long as I let the car run for several hours and I drive it and stuff before I shut it back off. But if you jumpstart your car and the battery's half dead and then it dies on you again, and you're like, and you try to crank it, and we've all been there where you're like, I really need to get to work this morning, and your car, it's like, I swear it turned over, and now it will turn over again, and the battery's just like done. That's how I kind of think of Chinese elms. Like, it drops its leaves the first time. Shame on you, or shame on the plant, whatever the saying is. What's the saying on that?
Shame on you. Second time is shame on me, I think. But it's your fault both times. But
yeah, it really is. And then if you push that tree over the edge, it's gonna just die on you. So they are durable, but not that durable. And then when it comes to flexibility is what I've referred to as bending goes. If you wanted to bend even the finest twigs on Chinese elm, they have a tendency to be more brittle than other varieties of elm that I work with, which is sad because there's so much that could be done. When you want to fully wire a deciduous tree, you have to be very careful. I mean, they could break right off at the base of where they're growing from the trunk. They could, you could split a branch by just bending a branch to like 5 degrees to the side, and the branch will split in half like a banana. So it's just they're good they can be bent, but it's always that thing is people are why don't you just cut and grow instead of trying to wire them all the time, which I mean, that alternative, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, and then one of the other things that kind of lets me down with the Chinese elm is that the bark, the bark can be really just uninteresting. Some varieties of lace bark exfoliate.
Yeah, lace bark and cork bark, those are really nice, but just the standard one is kind of lackluster.
Yeah, you get this grayish, brownish kind of bark that it's papery because it's so thin. Unless you have some kind of interesting scars or deciduous tree type characteristics like nodules or burls on the trunk, or some kind of something that looks like it's naturalistic to what a deciduous tree would do from just being older. Otherwise, it's pretty smooth. And smooth trunk deciduous trees are better reserved for stuff like stewardias and beech trees. Whereas the Chinese elm, the leaves and the growth habit and the way that the twigs look without leaves on them are just not as beautiful as stewardia, hornbeam, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah. I've also found that Chinese elm can be semi-evergreen. A lot of times it'll be one of the last ones to turn yellow and drop. It's so messy, but sometimes if it's warm enough, it'll stay green almost through the whole winter.
Yeah. I've heard some people say that Chinese elm is a semi-tropical.
Yeah. They can be a little bit more sensitive to cold than the natives.
And it is, and it's in the name, Chinese. It's a Chinese, Asian-oriented plant. So I'm guessing it comes from areas that are very temperate, comparable to, Portland, Louisiana, or any other places that are temperate, similar to us.
Back at the university, we treat them similar to the azaleas as far as cold storage goes. We try not to let them freeze too hard, whereas some things will let them do a real hard freeze below freezing. But the azaleas and stuff like that, we'll keep it, between 32 and 42, really. And that's what we do with the Chinese elms, too. We try to keep them a little bit warmer. I feel like in the past, we've even kept them in the greenhouse over the winter and displayed them. But that's one thing that if you do that, you do want to eventually give it a cold period so that it can go dormant and rest. Otherwise, if you push it too far, it'll kind of peter out with energy.
Yeah, you really want to be a little bit more consistent with warmth and light and stuff with the Chinese elm.
Yeah.
If you want to get some kind of serious performance out of it. So
yeah.
And performance, whenever I say performance, when it comes to deciduous trees, I'm always referring to its ability to become twiggy and dense. And that's something that, one of the main reasons why I even got into bonsai in the first place is because I wanted to have a really beautifully dense, twiggy, deciduous tree or two in mine. And I've got a couple in my collection now. But it's sad because, well, I mean, it's not sad that I have deciduous trees, but it's kind of a thing where I have these Chinese elms and they're great, but then my hornbeam and my winged elm and my cedar elm and my water elms are just way twiggier, fine twigs. We're talking like 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 just that beautiful, like it reduces down to like almost nothing. It's like hair thin, almost twigs. Whereas some varieties of Chinese elms are just not capable of that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm over here just saying like, I'm like just over the head, like just bashing Chinese elms.
No, I don't think so. I think it's true. I mean, I've worked with Chinese elms and there's something I struggle a little bit with in getting that twigginess. It's one of those things that if you cut too much, it doesn't replace it as fast as you would think it does. Yeah. And it's a little bit tricky to get it to the twigginess that you want it, but you can get it there and it's beautiful when you do. But if the native elms twig up better and faster, then heck, we should be using those. So really I mean, nothing against Chinese elms. Some people have great luck with them, and I know. I mean, I've seen gorgeous ones, but yeah, I mean, I'm curious about these natives.
Yeah, the natives are, in my opinion, superior to. I mean, you have the pleasure of being near to Andrew Robson's nursery. Mm-hmm. And he's got plenty of deciduous, and he's got some elms that I've seen there that are absolutely amazing.
Lovely.
He's got more Japanese maples, I think, just overall percentage wise, which makes sense for you guys' range.
Yeah.
But the natives are way better. I can go through that list of I'm
gonna write. I've got my pen. I'm gonna write them down.
But yeah, right before we do write down our list of Chinese elms. Let's hear from our sponsor, Bonsai Bar.
This podcast is supported by Bonsai Bar, the beginner bonsai workshop popping up in breweries all across the Northeast. Bonsai Bar is 2 hours of tiny tree goodness disguised as a night out with friends. Come grab drinks, create a new tree, and watch as your friends and family get the bug for bonsai. Bonsai Bar is always looking for teachers and assistants, and you listen to this podcast, so you're probably already qualified. Bring your knowledge out to the bar. Apply today. Find event tickets, contact info, and more at bonsaibar.com.
Thank you, Bonsai Bar, for being one of our main sponsors of the show.
Woo!
And thank you, Timothy Arsenal, the Tree EO. Yeah, thank you guys. But yeah, Chinese elms. The branch manager.
The branch manager.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, tree jokes. Dad tree jokes all day. But yeah, the native elms that grow here in Louisiana that I've seen, you're going to have the humus varieties are going to be humus alata. Sorry, I'm being a little groggy and sick. Humus alata is my one of my absolute favorites. It's kind of like my cornerstone of bonsai, where it comes to it. That species taught me how to grow and develop and cut, grow branches out, cut back, regrow, build deciduous structure. It's the winged elm. They grow out. They have a great quirky, just like this. It's quirky. It's a quirky tree. Quirky
tree.
Yes,
quirky tree.
I'm saying two different words there, but it's quirk is that it's very quirky. Sorry. If this is your first episode, I'm sorry. But the winged elm holds a special place in my heart. They also call it witch elm or wahoo. Yeah, they call it. Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know why, but that's what it's called, like in like Alabama and like northern parts.
That's funny.
Of this.
We've got there's a euonymus in Michigan that's a native that's called a wahoo, and it cracks me up. Wahoo.
And it's a so that is. So give me the common name on the euonymus.
Oh, the
sorry, butchered
euonymus. Euonymus. It's the wahoo. Hold on, I gotta figure it out. I don't remember what
it's not a spindle tree, is it?
No. Hold on. Euonymus wahoo. Hold on. Atropurpureus, the American wahoo.
Great. That tells me everything I need to know. But for our listeners, you can go Google that and go see what type of tree that is. It a good deciduous tree in that range?
It's more of it's a native. It's like a shrub. I don't know if it's ever been used for bonsai, but I know you can use the Euonymus alata, which is the winged burning bush. I've seen
that's where I've
one
heard
in the yard. Okay. That's a but I think Euonymus atripaparius, the American wahoo, is also a kind of burning bush, and it's native and it won't get invasive. So that one would be interesting to try as a bonsai.
The burning bush, the actual Aleda one, the winged burning bush.
Yeah,
that one is a big interest of mine too, as well, because of the winged elm, and also sweet gums are liquid amber that grows here. I think it's the liquid amber stratifolia grows here in southern Louisiana, and it also has wings. And when we say wings, it's got the branch, and then it's got on either side where the buds occur. It's alternating buds. And where the buds occur, there's a gap, and then like it comes up, and there is this. It's a plated, corky wing. It's really weird looking. That's why they also call it witch elm, because it's got like this weird, spooky vibe to it. When it's dormant, it looks amazing. Yeah, and the wings can vary in size. When the tree's young, it can have smaller wings, and then they'll grow really fast, and the wings will get enormous, and the branches, it makes the branch look bigger than it really is too, which helps me with kind of cheating on branch diameter sometimes on certain trees. That's not why I use the tree, but I just think it's a really sure
whatever.
But I do really love my my Aledas, my Humus Aledas, and then a very, very close relative that's also a corky elm that grows here. It's actually I do Austin Bonsai Society every once in a while, and they have this a lot. It's the Humus crassifolia, or the Texas cedar elm. It's an amazing tree. If you're in the States and you're kind of like hearing all these like elm varieties, I may have talked about these elm varieties in the past on previous episodes. I'm having like deja vu right now, but I do talk about elm a lot. I've given a lot of different workshops and lectures and classes and whatever, where I talk about these, because it's one of my primary species that I work with. But yeah, the Texas cedar elm, if you guys are taking notes, take note on this tree. This tree is amazing. It's like a slightly improved winged elm, so it's tougher to get them to look certain ways when it comes to, like, you have to kind of grow them from seed or from a cutting to get that like ultimate trunk that you really want, because their growth habit is very straight. And the winged elm will also grow very straight, but at least it has a little bit of a different quality to it. The cedar elm, the winged elm are debated whether or not they're almost the same tree in some circumstances, but I think that's just a lot of false identification. The cedar elm, or the Humus crassifolia, is more of a drier, arid climate type tree. It can take high humidity situations like what we have here, like 100% humidity, to more of a deserty environment where you will actually see it growing more native. They also call it like the cow pasture tree. Like, it's just a weedy tree that kind of just grows wherever it can, and then cows tend to eat it down into like little bushes, and those are usually the targets for collection. You go to like a cow pasture in like northern Texas and mid Texas, and you go to like where the cows go into the wood line, you'll find a lot of these guys, they'll be chewed into like little shrubbery, because I mean they're everywhere. They grow in the cracks of concrete. They grow in the sides of buildings, sometimes like old brick buildings. I've seen elms, like cedar elms and winged elms, growing out the sides of just anywhere. But yeah, these guys also have a winged habit as well, but it's not nearly as prominent as the winged elm, but their bark is distinct. The winged elm is a little bit more of like a smooth but warty, kind of almost like a hackberry bark where it could build up. And then the cedar elm is like a bluish green from a distance.
That's good.
Yeah, it's and the bark is very fissury as well. It's a beautiful tree. And you can really, like, the winged elm from a distance looks kind of orangey, kind of grayish, and then a cedar elm from a distance is going to look kind of bluish. And it's very, very easy. Once you see it, you're like, oh, okay. When the first time you see a cedar elm, you just know. And then also the leaf shape is going to be more round. It's going to be, what's that called? The leaf shape, whatever. Because winged elms are super pointed and they're narrow in like most cases.
Lanceolate, and then round would be more like, oh my God. I don't remember.
Well, yeah, you know that shape. But yeah, they're because they look more like a Chinese elm leaf. The Chinese elm can actually be very round as well. Elms tend to have serrated, pointed leaves that are simple in shape. They could be kind of like pointy, or they can be more round on the tip. And a huge distinction between a lot of these native elms and a Chinese elm. So if you pick up like a Chinese elm or a Zelkova, your Zelkova is not technically an elm, like you said earlier, Carmen, but it's more symmetrical in the way the leaf is shaped. The cedar elm and the winged elm have asymmetrical leaves. So if you look at the leaf, it's actually shorter and narrower on one side. Like it looks like it got smushed a little bit on one side, and the other side is more fat and round. It comes around towards the tip of the leaf, and also they are doubly serrated. Some of them are even more. I don't know if there's like beyond doubly serrated, if there's a name for that.
I don't think so. I'm looking at a bunch of
leaf shapes.
Yeah.
The serration is whenever there's the little pointy bits coming off the leaf on the edges. But yeah, the serration is a little bit more on a winged elms and cedar elms have double. So you have the points, and then you look in between the points, and there's another set of points.
My God.
It's like shark teeth. There's just like there's another row. But yeah,
that's a really good defining characteristic of the elm. If you're trying to identify it, having that weird at the base of that leaf where it's not symmetrical, and it has that weird little dip in on one side, that's a really, really good way to know that you've got it.
Sorry, I've got
you laughing at me?
No, I was laughing at someone's trying. I'm at the nursery right now. Was getting a phone call, and I'm just like over here, just looking at the phone as it rings. But no. I was also paying attention to you. I'm sorry, Carmen.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But anyway, but yeah, those are like pretty top tier elms there, in my opinion, especially for our range. And then you kind of move along, and you get to like you get to the American elm, which is the Humus americana. That's a really great species for bonsai as well, but they tend to have a little bit of a bigger leaf than the other varieties that I just mentioned, because
do they ever reduce?
They can.
I've not worked with them very much.
They can.
I've not seen them very much as bonsai either.
They show up every once in a while. And it's just because people choose Zelkova or Chinese elm, and I'm seeing more and more cedar and winged elms pop up. But yeah, Americana it's the tree that that was mostly affected by the Dutch elm disease. There was a lot of them were wiped out at that time, and because they were bigger elms. They're like one of the bigger elms that we have in our country, in our hemisphere.
I just sent you some leaf shapes if you're curious.
I'm very curious.
Chat.
Was it on? That was chat. Yeah. So we can go through and look at that. Yeah,
there's a really beautiful, I think it's an American elm. There's one I used to drive by almost every day to work, and it's just this gorgeous, upright, fountaining tree. It's hard to describe. Like it's very vase shaped. It's beautiful. I don't know if it's an American elm because so many of them were wiped out for Dutch elm disease, but it's something. I should get closer to it and figure it out. If they ever cut that down, I'm going to be really annoyed.
Yeah.
I don't think they will. I think it's like in a business's landscape and it's safe, but you never know.
Yeah. It's sad because, sometimes these older trees will get cut because they're in the way of expanding, cities or rural areas. Yeah. Whenever they get older and then they start, like one of the issues we have down here with our older growths or older stands of trees and stuff is that whenever they do a lot of the subdivisions around here, they put in a lot of clay and they rework the ground, and then they spray the crap out of everything with like herbicides. Yeah. And that just, even though the tree's big and mighty and old, the genetics are just geriatric at that point, and the tissues and stuff, and they just can't take it anymore.
That's sad.
And then they build parking lots around some of these older trees. Like our live oaks get subjected to this. They get parking lot built around them. And why would a live oak really enjoy like gasoline and oil leaks into its root system?
Right.
You know,
it's like, here, have no soil penetration.
Yeah, it's kind of over now. You know, like for those older trees, unfortunately. So if you see an old American elm, they do have like that base shape, like Carmen said. That is typical habit of a lot of these trees. So one of the things I was going to get to with the growth habit of American versus like the winged elm and the cedar elms. The winged elm and the cedar elm tend to be a little bit of an understory tree, and then they kind of fight for that sunlight. And if they can get big, they will. They will get probably around 30 to 40 feet tall. The American elm is capable of reaching heights of up to I think around 50 to 60, even like twice the height. Even bigger than that.
Big trees,
massive.
Big trees. Yeah.
Let's see. There's one in Canada that is like 140 feet. Ooh. It's just a monster.
Wow.
And then it has a 6.43 foot diameter.
Wow.
Just big. It's just monsters. And so yeah. And the leaf size does tend to be bigger. The growth habit, they either can grow like really big base shape, or we'll talk about elm shapes in a second, or they can grow into like this other shape. It's kind of like an open broom style, which is also what I call the park tree. It's like it's like the fancy big park tree that everybody takes photos under, and it's super aesthetic, and it never has to worry about anything. And normally that tree's in like an arboretum, and it's really well taken care of. And they have an arborist that visits it like every once in a while and checks it for diseases. And then you've got like the other shapes, which would be like your typical flame or brooms. And so when I say an open broom just is just saying an older deciduous tree like this tends to have gaps in its foliage. You can see through it pretty easy. Almost like what a live oak or a coastal oak would look like when it's older, just because it's able to spread out. It doesn't want to become pointed. It just wants to get wide.
It almost looks like it's weeping like towards the lower branches because it's so big and wide and hanging open that some of those low branches look almost like they're facing downwards.
And the leaves on like winged and cedar can be anywhere from like an inch, and then you could reduce them down to a astounding like 1/16 of an inch,
teeny tiny.
And you can make them. I showed a winged elm one time at a convention, and somebody was like, "Oh, that's a nice Chinese elm," and I was like, "No, that's native winged." And they're like, "Oh crap." But the American elm, you can get it smaller, but it's going to be a struggle because it just wants to be such a large tree. But I mean, they do reduce surprisingly well, especially when they get root bound. And that's another thing we'll have to talk about with deciduous trees, especially with elms in just a moment once we get through our list of other natives. But we also have slippery elm.
Ooh, slippery elm. Forgot about that one.
Yeah, the Ulmus rhubarb or rubra. I don't get to really work with a lot of these because they're a little bit beyond my range. They grow more up into like the Carolinas, but they're also a very beautiful tree. Very also a pretty big tree as well. They can grow to a pretty decent size, not nearly as gigantic as the American the Americana, but there are records of them reaching like right at like very close to 100 feet as well. I've seen some slippery elm bonsai, and they make a gorgeous tree.
Cool.
But I haven't been able to interact with them a lot. But they're also referred to as they have like that same issue that the cedar and the winged elms have. They're the Americanas and the slippery elms or the Humus rubra are confused as the same species in most cases.
Yeah.
And then that's, I mean, there are plenty other elms, but these are kind of like
talk about water elms.
Yeah, I'm going to bring those up because there's outliers. There's outliers. Okay. Because like Cletus, the sugarberry, was considered for a little while to be an elm species, as well as the winged elm. So these are two outliers that make amazing bonsai as well. And so the sugarberry are the Cletus levigata. I'm trying my best with these Latin names.
Sugarberry.
It's a southern sugarberry. So it's a
Celtis.
Celtis. Yeah.
Celtis.
I say Cletus.
Yeah. Levigata. Celtis levigata.
The second part of its nomenclature or its name is like it's like Tolkien Elvish.
Yeah.
With an A before an E.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's a beautiful water loving, kind of more up on the banks of rivers and marshes and swamps here. And it makes a little berry and sometimes a little, all elms flower, but this one's a little bit more obvious. It's like it's got that weird flower that looks like it's a cup within a cup within a cup of flowers. Yeah. And it kind of dangles down. Hornbeams do this really well. No, beeches. I'm sorry. The American beech does this really well. It's a beautiful, it's greenish, turns brown, and then it dangles from the tree. And then the seed bodies kind of just fall out of it. The hackberries do that as well, also called southern sugarberries. But they're confused with common hackberry, which also is not a bad bonsai species or a species for bonsai. But the sugarberry is more superior because it's got a warty bark, where it has the bark where it stands on top of each other, kind of like a pine tree does, but there's space between it. So it's very weird looking. It looks like...
It is weird looking. I saw a picture of it.
It looks like something's wrong with the tree.
It's cool, yeah.
But it's a very interesting trunk. And if you can maintain that bark, it will it'll get thicker and it'll get kind of... It'll just be one of those trees in your collection where somebody would be like, what in the hell is that? But it has all the capabilities of an elm. So it can grow it's actually one of the more finely twigged species that we can get here in the States. And then another tree that was confused to be an elm is the Planera aquatica, which is the water elm. It's so it's not technically an elm. It's a sycamore. It's in the Humaceae. It's within the Humaceae family.
Yeah.
But it's Planera. A planer tree is the sequoia. No, sycamore. No, sorry.
Sycamore, yeah.
Sycamore,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Planera aquatica, the water elm. Oh, that's cool. I always thought it was actually an elm, but it's neat.
It's its own like little subclass of Humaceae. And that is the reason why I'm going to bring them up last. I mean, we're talking about elms for bonsai, unfortunately, but the one tree that I say stands out above all the others is this species here. This species is very underutilized in bonsai. I've seen a fair share of them as bonsai. I brought mine to nationals this past year, and I know I made a big deal. Y'all probably heard about it when we went to nationals and we talked about all the trees there. And I was like, "Oh, I was the one winged elm since the Von Dancing winged elm."
Kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal because
it's a big deal.
A lot of these species just don't get used as bonsai, and they're understudied, and they're, like they don't become popular or in vogue until somebody uses them and someone's like, oh, that's nice. Where can I get this from? It's like, oh, wouldn't you know, like somebody's got thousands of these for sale as bonsai, or, they're easy to go dig up. So here in Southeast Louisiana, like winged elm's been on people's radars for decades. It's not nearly as collected as much as like a bald cypress would be. I would say like for every one bald cypress that gets collected, for every one water elm, for every one water elm that's collected in Louisiana, you got like 100 bald cypresses collected, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think it should be the opposite. I think that they should be collected alongside bald cypresses at the same rate. Don't don't collect all the trees in your range and then completely ruin the ecosystem. But you can collect them when they're very young and grow them out, and they grow very fast. So you can actually thicken the trunk really well on them. They are a water elm for a reason, because the ones that we have here grow in standing water and even grow, they're called aquatica in their Latin name, because they also can grow underwater. Nuts. They can, and that's something that's not mentioned. If you go to like online sites or like, wherever, like plant identification, like LSU Ag, like Louisiana State University stuff, and you don't see that very often. Nobody really talks about that water habit. Like they will grow in water just like a cypress will do, just like a button bush plant, like a button bush tree will do. They will grow in water and they will not complain. And there's one of those few species where you can take it from. It's like James Bond's car that turns from like a boat back into a car. It has that capability of being very versatile. So you can't overwater it. You can underwater it for sure. I
remember your water elm at Nationals being very thirsty.
Yes. It was like, it's 100 degrees in this building and there's no sunlight and I don't know what's going on. And so the tree
it was unhappy.
It just dropped all of its leaves on the way home.
Just to clarify the nomenclature, because I might have screwed people up there saying that the planer aquatica was like a sycamore. I looked it up, and so the big difference is that they are different families. So the actual sycamore tree is in a different family than the water elm, but the names do sound similar. So that's curious. But I just didn't want people to be like, God, Carmen, your nomenclature is wrong. And then,
I mean, it's planaria, and it's so close.
It's very close to Platanus occidentalis, which is the sycamore. So yeah. But no, sycamores are in a whole other family. So interesting.
Water elm, naturally small leaf, naturally smaller tree, can get big sometimes, but more of a shrubby habit. Twigginess out of this world. Just like the hackberry, gets super fine twigs by just enormous amounts of just like it. It's one of those trees where you trim it and then you go back later to check and you're like, I didn't even have to try. And this thing like multiplied. It refined. It went into refinement for me. And then, like the American hornbeam, we can also kind of touch lightly on that one. But the American hornbeam and the water elm could be very similar in growth habit. Because they're an understory tree, they have a tendency to grow more windy through their own branching. So they're always seeking light from like a more of a not a basally dominant kind of growth habit, but more of a really spread out growth habit. So they're
looking for light. They're not just going straight up. Yeah,
they're evolved to just grow out and flat, as opposed to your Americana, your slippery elm that grows straight up and like bolts toward the sky, because it knows it's the big tree. It's the king of all the elm trees. But the water elms and the hornbeams, they have this habit to them where it's just, if you want to grow a tree that will make intricate little pieces of movement and muscling in the branches for you, and you don't have to try too hard, and you can really cut and grow these trees and get natural forms out of them, water elm and American hornbeams are kind of like the answer there. And then if you slow them down, if they get root bound, and then you develop a really healthy root bound kind of root system in the pot, then you always give them you have good optimal drainage, you have a good really nice wide container for holding a lot of good moisture in their pot, they will really perform well. They will grow a branch out, you cut back, the branch will come out finer, you cut back, it'll come back finer and finer. It's just like, you have to like try and for them to not get really fine branching like they do.
Yeah.
You have to butcher them back. You have to cut branches off. You have to be like, stop it. Stop being so good. Like, stop growing so many fine branches. But then that in turn can be challenging, because like we had talked earlier, you said you have yourself a little hornbeam and it's hard to develop density or girth in lower branches on the trees.
Yeah, it's trying really hard to grow up and it's putting more bulk up top than down low. And I'm trying to contain it because I really like some of the movements up top, but they're getting too thick. I don't want to have to cut them off because they're really weird and cool, but I might have to cut them off. Or maybe I'll just cut the low branch off. I don't know.
That is one of the biggest letdowns with developing certain elm varieties or certain Humacia growth habit trees that are especially understory trees.
Yeah.
Because they want to fountain out. They want to grow. The more bush habit Humacia, like the cedar or the winged elm, they will, if they lose the top of the tree, it's in their genetics to just push more up and out, and then the lower branches will shed over time as well. And so that's something you have to really watch out with when you're developing these branches on your trees, like your deciduous Humacia, is that those lower branches are prone to fall off because they will become weak. They will become shaded out, and then the tree's just going to do what it does naturally. It's just going to give up on that. It's going to make it weak intentionally, and it's going to die back gradually. So you have to really keep the top of your deciduous or your Humacia elm varieties in check. And one of the things that, well, unfortunately, we have to practice every once in a while is we have to basically behead our older deciduous bonsai trees. Because like you said, it just puts all the energy into the top of the tree, and then you'll have this super duper dense crown and look amazing up there. And then your lower branches are just slowly kind of just lagging behind, and then they'll start having some dieback. And then the top will swell, and you'll have all these branches, even if you have them where they're supposed to be, where you won't have, even if you don't have bar branches or whirling branches, you have your branches where they're supposed to be, they'll still get big up the top, and you'll lose a lot of your tapering, and you'll start to inverse taper at the top, just because that's how it is. And so one of the best things you can do in that situation is air layer the top off and make a really awesome show in, and then cut down to the next set of branching that will resolve that taper issue you have.
That's a good idea.
And in turn, it would also rechannel energy back down to the bottom part of the tree. So when you thin out that top of the crown, you'll lose a pretty significant amount of twigging up there. But I mean, with deciduous trees, it's so easy to rebuild that.
Yeah.
And for that moment, the tree will go, oh crap, and it'll rechannel its energy, and then you can pinch out the growth in the spring off of those branches that were pre-existing, and you can push the energy down and let the bottom run.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is I've been letting all of it run and then pruning it all at the same point, where maybe I need to restrict the top growth sooner in the season and then let the bottom growth run longer.
Yeah.
I'll give that a try next year. I'll send you a picture of it. It's a weird, cool little tree.
Yeah, definitely. We can put that in the Discord too for everyone to kind of see.
You can see my problems.
I put my problems out for everyone to see. But no, I don't want to discourage anybody from growing elms. You know, I was being very discouraging in the very beginning about Chinese elms, but at the same time, it's that's a great tree to learn on. It taught me a lot of my things that I need to do as far as developing bonsai and deciduous trees, especially. But the winged elm is really the one that got me further along. As far as if you're in the United States, I think just about any elm in any climate will work, except for obviously super alpine environments. If you're up elevations really high, or if you're in a desert environment Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, it's gonna be a little bit more challenging to grow certain elm species because they are very heavy water loving plants. They don't like to be super duper wet, but they do love just being moist all the time.
I found though with Chinese elms, they don't like to be as wet. They really get cranky if they're moist for too long. But all the native elms seem to like water a lot more.
That's especially true with the corkbark elm, the corkbark Chinese elm. That's borderline succulent almost in some cases.
Yeah.
I'll water my water elms and my American hornbeams, my other native, Humacia. I'll water the hell out of those in the morning and just give them a nice drench and make sure that they get full saturation. And I'll even pass over on hotter days on them again. And then the plated corkbark elm, one good watering, and then I just leave it and I let it dry down.
The nice thing that I found about the Chinese elms, though, is that they'll tell you when they're being overwatered because their leaves will turn yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Start to fall. So, like, you can catch it and, you know, before your leaves start to fall. But if they're starting to turn a little bit yellow, that's a great sign that, like, you're overwatering. And so back off. Great. It's nice when a tree tells you before it just, like...
completely shits the bed.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, too much water.
But no, the other thing with like yellowing leaves is that if you're overwatering too, that also tells you a lot about root density as well. So there's a lot of things that happen with elms. They do need a really, really high oxygen aerobic soil. That's where they really, you know, except for the weirdos like the water elms and the hornbeams, they love to sit in standing water sometimes. But the typical elms, they like aerobic soil a lot. And so if you get yellowy leaves or dieback, there's one of two things happening. The roots are suffocated or the roots are suffocated. So it's
it's like either they're suffocated because you don't have good drainage or they're suffocated because you're overwatering it, and they both play right into each other. So that's a good point too. Yeah, I think when I was struggling with these elms, it was in a soil mix that was not ideal. So I was in my past and now will be remedied.
Yeah. So I would say another thing about elms is that if you love your bonsai, which all of us do, but if you really love your bonsai and you want to be like a busy work person, like if you're a busybody,
that's me.
It's kind of like, you know, like you get Japanese black pine if you want to be a busybody for pine trees, because you're always engaged with the tree. There's always something to do.
Japanese black pine, juniper, azalea, elm.
Elms. Elms are so... Oh, yeah. Trident maples. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't even want to look at you, Trident.
Yeah.
Because they...
Wait your turn. I've already pruned you 3 times this week.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gets out of shape and you got to cut a whole branch section off because it got too big and you're like, all right. And then it doesn't back bud because trident maples are a whole other thing.
You made it cranky. Yep. Anyway.
I don't want to talk about tridents. I love
busybody elm.
Better.
Let's get back to the busybody elm.
Yeah, the busybody elm trees. But yeah, elms will give you something to do every season. They'll give you their full season trees, so they'll give you something to look at every year. So typical year chart for an elm is going to be pretty involved, but you know, once you get the hang of it, it doesn't really get that complicated. But before I do start talking about care guides for elms and starting to get towards the end of our episode here, we do need to mention that the show is also sponsored by Bonsai Central. That is going to be it's going to be the newest bonsai convention. This is an inaugural launch coming up May 3rd through 5th, 2024. It's going to be at the Gateway Convention Center in Collinsville, Illinois, and it's going to just be an amazing show. It's going to be very comparable to the national show and the Pacific Bonsai Expo. They're going to have bonsai professionals from literally all over the world. This is their first time they're cutting the red tape on the show, and they're just going big.
All out.
Going all out. They got Bjorn Holm. They got Tyler Sherrod. They got Mira Heidick. They've got Andrew Robson, Young Cho, Mario Stemberger. Just amazing lineup of headlining artists with workshops you can get in with them. You also got a bunch of vendors there. They're going to be just from all over the United States. You've got my boy Byron Myrick doing just awesome, highly textured utilitarian style pottery, bonsai pottery here. You got Greenwich Gardens, one of our patron channel sponsors here. Thank you guys so much. You get to have me.
Ta-da!
I don't know if anybody's excited for that, but I'm going to be there.
Everybody go bother Evan. Everybody
go crazy. You're going to have I'm butchering his name. Now, what's his name is?
Totutake, I think.
Totutake Bonsai
I think so.
Ceramics. That guy
he's great. He's really great.
He's hot.
Mm-hmm.
He's big right now. Like, go get his pottery. He's got some of the finest bonsai pottery in the United States. I'm just going to say
and
it.
His wife does the smaller white ceramics with the paintings on them as well. So it's
Amazing.
a whole. They're gorgeous, totally gorgeous. Yeah. And Evan, you're going to be vending some of our Tori's Solis.
Oh yeah.
Pottery,
Speaking
correct?
of since Tori won't be able to make it, we had her on our previous episode, and I will have some Tori Solis pottery. You guys want to come out and support a young and inspiring aspiring bonsai potter? Definitely do that. And then it's just there's so much going on here. I mean, there's going to be a full bonsai show with cash awards. How often do you hear like a cash awards at a bonsai show? I mean,
large cash prizes.
Yeah, they're gonna be handing out big checks like Happy Gilmore. So
I hope they get the big check. That would be great.
I think that'd be awesome. But yeah,
really
anyway,
exciting.
Go check out Bonsai Central. You can go to bonsai/ like the little dash central.com and go register. There's a call for trees and there is a call for people to register. Go do it. It's gonna be a great show. I will be there May 3rd May 3rd to 5th 2024. Sometimes I look at words and they and the
words
keyboard
are hard. It's
I get
fine.
like a keyboard smash suddenly and I just pronounce everything. But yeah, care guide for elms. Let's break it down really quick as we get closer to the end here because we're running a little. Well, actually, we ran really long on a previous episode, come to think of it. But we did, because we're just goofy goopers like that. But yeah, care guide for elms, springtime, repot season. Get on those elms. Lift at least all of your elms out of the pots every season. You don't have to do a full repot on all your elm trees every year, but you need to do a soil inspection on your trees. You need to go in, take a chopstick, scrape the first layer of like half an inch down, see where your roots are. If you're fertilizing with organic fertilizer, scrape that yummy organic cake off the top of your soil mix so you don't get any clogging. And if you're getting dense root systems, get yourself like a tree horn. You know, it's like your shoehorn, but for a tree. And shoehorn
wedge it out of there.
Yeah, scoop it on out of there like with your shoehorn. And check the root system. Inspect the sides. Look for dead spots. You can see dead spots in the root system. Usually got white, fresh pots, fresh roots. God dang. Yeah, but you got the white fleshy roots going to be growing on the tips. They should be active during the springtime. You'll see them starting to elongate and starting to push. And if you have dead zones, they'll be kind of dull, off-white colored, and they'll be a little smushy, and you'll be able to poke it with your chopstick. Also, snip the soil. Snip the roots. Okay. Something a lot of people don't do. If it smells funky, if it stinks,
you got a problem.
Yep. You need to excavate. You need to get in there and see what's going on. And you don't have to do a full repot on your deciduous trees every year, on your elms especially. But if the tree is like pushing up and out of the pot and like the soil levels above the pot and the roots are like obviously pushing and growing through like the mosses you have on top of your soil surface, then yeah, do a reduction, do a maintenance root pruning on it, reduce it by 20%. Don't do anything harsh. Don't bare root the tree. You never have to bare root elms. They actually really hate that. That pushes them back. So keep your awesome, start by putting good soil in them during repotting season when they're younger. And then once you get akadama, lava, pumice, whatever soil mixes you choose to go with, introduce that in there early and try to keep that root ball nice and tight like a tiger. And just, that will keep them optimal. That will keep the sheen of the tree very happy. And then as you go into the springtime, they will elongate. Now that we've checked everything out, you can do bud selection at this time. So you can do some light trimming. You can cut some heavier branches, but I wouldn't do any I wouldn't chop any chunks down. But I would, I would reserve that for the winter, which is on the flip side of this care chart. But yeah, you do bud selection. So you can literally just rub the buds off that you don't want to develop, or you can cut to the internode that you want to elongate. And I've heard people say that's the rule of threes on elm pruning. So you leave 3 nodes because of their alternate branch habit. So they're not opposite like a trident. They're alternate. So you have internode, bud on the left, internode, bud on the right, internode, bud on the left. And so you want to choose how that's going to bud out and that's going to develop. in which direction you're going to have it move in. And then it'll help you reduce and get taper in your branching a lot easier, because if you cut back too far, you get one really strong shoot and then you'll get really long internodes. If you keep 3, you will reduce the energy better. If you kept 2, you can keep 2 on the top side of your tree. That will help slow it down. That also will push faster and bigger shoots. You want to kind of slow it down. And that'll help you kind of gauge, when you get into the refinement. And then also another thing you do in the spring, I would do proactively treat for insects. Big insect that attacks our native elms here is the kama butterfly. And its larvae, or the caterpillar, is the kama butterfly caterpillar. It's a brown butterfly. It's one of my favorite butterflies. The larvae is, I like the kama a lot because it looks like a dry leaf on the bottom side of its wings. It's just a beautiful, beautiful butterfly.
Yeah, those are gorgeous.
But their caterpillars are the stinging caterpillars, and everybody hates those. Oh,
yeah. Don't touch.
Yeah. Don't touch them. I used to touch them as a kid. If you touch them lightly, if you pet them, they're sweet to them. They're like kind of fuzzy feeling, but if you push, that's whenever the poisonous stingers kind of just inject into your skin. But they're really cool. They come in like red and orange and yellow colors, and then if you see them, I usually just take them off and I put them into the wood line, because their host plant is our native elm trees. So they're just doing their thing. You don't have to eradicate them, but proactively treat for them. You could spray lightly to discourage them, or discourage the host butterfly from visiting your plant. Or you can just hand remove them. You can also get mites. Trees that have been overwatered really bad, and they start getting kind of fungusy, moldy sections on their leaves, and they have dieback. Mites can invade those spaces. So treat for mites. They can completely mess your tree up. They cause deformed leaves, distorted leaves, and unhealthy growth that will result in really bad, unhealthy branches. So, treat for those guys. Root aphids can also be an issue, but not as bad as some other varieties like Japanese black pine or bald cypresses.
One of the pests I've had an issue with on elms is scale.
Scale's really bad.
Yeah, scale real bad, and then it gets that the honeydew from is it the ants that are eating it? I don't know, or the aphid, something. I don't know. It gets this black sooty mold on it then, and it just looks, the whole bark turns like black and gray, and just it's not. It doesn't, like, scale doesn't at this level doesn't usually hurt your tree that much. It's not like going to kill your whole tree, but it makes it look terrible. So scale is something that I've really struggled with on elms.
Yep. Get rid of your scale. Sometimes you'll have to go in and with like your pick, like a mechanic's pick, you have to pick the scale off. It can be harsh on some of the trees because they'll embed themselves into the bark, and then you'll have to just pick it off, and you'll get past that first layer of bark and you might get some green. But hitting it with a wire brush or killing it with a pesticide or vinegar works well on some of these varieties of scale. But vinegar also helps you combat lichen, which we have a lot of issues with here. I know Pacific Northwest and some other parts of the Midwest.
What do you mean?
Lichen. Lichen is awesome looking, and a lot of people will say they'll go to their elms.
I'm liking it.
They're like, I'm liking lichen, and it's I get it. It's a punny joke, but lichen is one of the worst things that can happen on your elm trees.
What? Why?
It intercepts buds from light.
Okay.
Especially on the interior of your tree.
But if it's on the trunk, doesn't matter, because you don't really need buds on your trunk.
You don't need buds on your trunk, and lichen's cool. But I'm gonna kind of go into this like a little bit more of Japanese aesthetic bonsai purist and be like, your trunk should be clean. Now, like, having mosses and lichens growing on like parts of your tree, and that looks really interesting, and it adds like that ancient vibe, because if you go to like at the park and you see a really old elm and you look up into the branches, you see ferns and lichen and moss growing on the deepest inset parts of the canopy. If you're going for a naturalistic style, cool.
Sure. If you're going for like a Kokofu Taikon 10 photographed in a Japanese book look, generally they don't have lichens on them.
Now, there are, like, once you have a certain amount of back budding, because that's one of the things that you can struggle with pruning your elms, is if you have lichen and scale intercepting your buds from light on the interior parts and you don't thin out your tree enough, then you'll get these long not wispy, but you'll get these wispy's opposite I'm talking about. You'll get these long branches with good movement in them with no branching further back towards the base of the trunk. And I'm always looking to get back budding. It's kind of like how a juniper, how you grow the tip out, but then you grow stuff further back on the branch to replace those tips eventually in the future.
Yeah.
Same thing with an elm tree. You're always looking to get that back bud that will maybe be a better tapering and better branch movement in the future for that branch. And that lichen's going to intercept the light. So get it off of there in the spring. And then, as you go into late spring, if you've got a really top dominant tree, now's the time to start pinching and pruning and really slowing down the top. Organic fertilizer goes a really long way. In the past, I've worked with Harry Harrington to kind of use the Danu, the microbiology, like the little supposedly beneficial bacteria and fungus and micro stuff that they've done there, where it evens out deciduous crowns. I've seen that work, but it also has to work. It works alongside organic fertilizer much better than just simply throwing Miracle-Gro on your trees. It's another thing too. Feed with a fair amount of like organics or a weaker fertilizer in the spring, because you will get push like you'll lose taper and branches and twigs so fast. So fertilize, keep a steady fertilizer on your tree during this time of year, but start slowing down. And we get into the summer, you really want to slow down on fertilizer, because high demand elm trees will grow and grow. And every time that a bud extends in like 100-degree day, evaporation is happening. And so you can actually weaken shoots and branches very easily by overproduction. So we want to slow down around that time. And then as we get into the summer, we get into a summer dormancy with our elms, and they'll actually stop growing almost entirely in some cases, especially here in Louisiana when it's like 115, our trees just stop.
Yeah.
And I always tell people whenever we're talking about elms in hot climates, full dense canopies on your elms, as dense as you can get it. Now, once you're done growing and you're done back budding, let everything fill in during the summer, because when you have hardened off mature leaves, you're getting two things. You're getting two benefits from that. You're getting shade and a microclimate that cools the entire tree throughout the summer, and you're getting longevity in those hardened off leaves, so that when the fall comes, those leaves will give you a better fall color show. That's something that a lot of people kind of overlook when they, because you can do partial defoliation in the summer and encourage some back budding as we start to cool off. But only do that if you're trying to get your tree to a high level of refinement for a show, for a winter silhouette show. But if you're just trying to enjoy the tree for fall color, one of the tricks you can do is leave the leaves on as long as you want. Remove large leaves to encourage smaller leaves to take their place and get more energy, and you'll get a healthy canopy and a nice shady habit. Because once the leaves are hardened off, it's like when you're extending your shoots, it's almost the same thing as an open wound on an elm tree. Like it's more likely to get diseased, get eaten by a bug, lose evaporation of water through it, and spurt out and bleed out more than a hardened off shoot. Once it's woody, it's fine. But if it's extending during the hot time of the year, it becomes risky, and it can wilt much easier and die back, and the root connected to it will die back. So if you harden everything off before the summer gets really, really hot, you'll be in the safe zone, and your roots will actually be able to self-regulate easier during that time as well with hardened off shoots. And then as you get into the fall, you can actually do a partial defoliation at this point. Do not fully defoliate unless you're doing a silhouette show. Stop fully defoliating your trees. That's one of the things I always say. Full defoliation is cool if you're trying to get like a nice twigginess for a fall show, or you're trying to build up refinement. But when your trees are I always kind of look at it like this with deciduous trees. You always ramp up in refinement, and you're getting towards a show. And then once the show happens, ease off and let the tree grow ragged, cut it back nice and sparse, and then let it kind of fill back in and start doing its own thing, and give it some time off. If a deciduous tree is not building towards show, it should be growing freely in a way where you're keeping it refined and you're developing it still, but you're not pushing it. because pushing it with a full defoliation during like late summer into fall can really jeopardize the tree's health. It's like doing a full bare rooting on the tree during repotting season. You're pushing it into hyperdrive. So be very careful with this, especially if you've done it every single year and your tree's like getting weaker every year and you're like, what's going on? Like, it's not pushing as hard as it did last time when I defoliated it fully. So do a partial defoliation and practice leaf cutting. I know this is very tedious, but fold the leaf in half, cut up towards the side of the leaf where you make a point at the end, and cut the leaves in half. If you have a big leaf, like if you got American elm, got American hornbeam gets a big leaf on it sometimes. You got Chinese elm's going to have this done to them as well. Cut the leaf in half, reduce the overall solar panel of the leaf down, and redistribute the energy across the tree, and rotate the trees during this time. They should be rotated in the spring, obviously, when they're growing, but in the fall, it's very, very important as well, because everything's winding down, everything's collecting energy at this point, and you want to make sure every part of your tree stays strong. Leaves fall off, wiring happens at this time because you can get wire on the branches easier, and then go into winter. And we need to do winter care later because I just rambled on about how much I love elm trees.
I remember you're like, I don't know if I'll have enough to talk about with elms.
It's like my main topic. It's like what I work with.
Outside of bald cypress.
Bald cypress and elm trees, and then occasionally maple trees whenever they're not growing like crap because of the heat. But yeah, elm trees are great. They're really, really good. It's like what I tell people with bald cypresses. If you live in the Southeast Louisiana and you have a bald cypress, you're doing yourself a disfavor, like what's that called?
Disservice.
A disservice. There you go. If you're in anywhere where you can grow elms, have an elm in your collection, you're doing yourself a disservice as well.
I'm doing myself a disservice. I got to get some elms. You've actually inspired me to work with some of the natives, because Chinese elm doesn't really do it for me, but some of these natives sound pretty fun.
Yeah, they're fun. But yeah, we'll visit Bonsai Word of the Week later in another episode.
The week if you want.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not like in a rush. Just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a little pushed for time today, unfortunately. Sorry.
Guys. We don't have. If you're pushed for time, we can.
Yeah, I'm a little pushed for time today, so
okay,
we'll do a Word of the Week next time. But we'll do some shout outs really quick. If you listen this far into the episode, thank you guys so much for listening. I know we have some people who listen to a lot of the episodes, backlogged episodes. There's some really great content back there. Go back and listen on whatever listening platform you're on. Subscribe. Please subscribe. It ups the algorithm. It puts us out to the masses better. Makes our show look better. Rate the show. Give us a 5-star rating, please. Please. That actually helps. Spotify has like a rating system, so 5-star rating would be great. And a subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you can listen to us every week. We are a weekly show, so we put out content every single week. Discord is always active. Go over to Patreon Little Things for Bonsai People to become a patron. We have a $1 tier if you just want to hear your name at the beginning of an episode. We have a $5 tier if you want to hear your name at the beginning of every episode. And we have a $30 tier if you want to have a monthly one-on-one 30-minute session with one of our amazing show hosts or me. I'm not taking myself out of the roster. I'll talk to people too. And also you get a Little Things shirt depending on what color and design we have. Just let me know your size and your shipping address and I will make it happen. Go over to underhillbonsaistore.com to go see our Little Things merch tab there, which is where we have our t-shirts that are currently in run. And then you can follow Underhill on Instagram, Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel that is very sad and has poorly edited videos. But if you want to put it with bad video quality, watch me work on bald cypresses, you can see it there. So yeah. And then for Carmen, where can they check out your stuff at?
You can find me on Instagram at Becoming Bonsai, and check out the Purple Pot Society, which is the National Women's Bonsai Group. You don't have to be a woman to join, but our focus is on educating and inspiring women to do bonsai and get involved. There's a Facebook and Instagram for that as well. And yeah.
Yep. And then for Mike Lane, which is our... I was joking, like I think on the previous episode where I was comparing our cast to like Family Guy. You get like you get Peter Griffin, me, like every episode, and you get like Stewie and and Brian. Like every once in a while, you'll get like a mix of the two. So, but he's like our Brian. He pops in, says really informative things. Really profound things.
Then he just leaves.
And then he's just gone. But no, we love you, Mike. We know you're busy. But yeah, you can go over to kitsunebonsai.com and go check out he's got merch for his Kitsune brand. He's got online classes, seasonal classes, depending on what is going on in his part of the world in South Florida. And yeah, it's just really good resource for learning about shohin. He's a shohin specialist, very, very good bonsai artist. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us this week, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us this guy week. This guy's weeks.
Or cold medicine. Woo!
Yeah, I'm stuffy. Me and Carmen both kind of sound slightly congested and head voicey, but it's fine. Like I said, should give you more feeling that listen to this episode outside in like a chilly day, a chilly morning with a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. It's a good time as always.
Yep. You have a good one.
You too. Bye. Bonsai board.